It's a great day for racing and a great day for a new tournament. Let's waste no time and jump right into the first group. We have the Gazeller, the Revealers, the Volkswagen, and a visit from Superman himself. Let's hope he doesn't use any of his superpowers or modify his vehicle in any way to get an unfair advantage, because he would be disqualified very quickly. But he's already showing that he's faster than a speeding bullet, not only in the air when he's flying or anything, but also when he's driving a car. He's already left everyone in the dust. He's approaching the final turn now, and no one is anywhere near him. Don't worry though, I'm sure the officials will look over him to make sure that he's not gaining an unfair advantage in any way. A 13.1, that does seem to indicate that the track is a little bit shorter, but that could also mean more high-speed antics are on the way later on in this tournament. A 13.16 is the time to beat. I'm sure other people will do that. The goal is to break the 13-second mark. I personally am sure that someone else will do it eventually. So Superman is starting off with a 5 already. I don't know about any of you, but I personally would love to see Superman go up against the Tesla Cybertruck from the Highway to Hell tournament that we just had not too long ago. Because that one was another massive speed demon that other people just struggled to keep up with. In this race right now though, Superman is ahead. The Revealers is trying to stay on his tail, with the other two not too far behind him. But Superman just keeps going and going, widening that gap, approaching the finish line. He's kind of being a showboat right now by grinding on the side of the track before he finishes backwards. And he didn't really lose a lot of speed. He did finish a little slower there, which could be because of that last move. But he finished with another 5. So Superman now only needs one more win in order to guarantee his spot in the finals. Meanwhile, the other 3, it's pretty much a fight for second place right now. However, we saw a second ago that Superman can be a little show-off-ish if he's far enough ahead, which could come back to bite him eventually. Because the Tesla Cybertruck had something similar happen in 1 or 2 of his races, so this could very easily mirror that. Right now, though, Superman does have a big lead, but look at this, he slides sideways, loses all his speed. The other 3 are coming, can they pass him? 1 passes him, 2 passes him, did all 3 do it? I think they might have. We're going to have to take a look at that replay. I was just saying how that showboatiness might catch up to him, and it just did. Did they all pass him? Yes, they did. Superman gets a 1. Now, hopefully, that was a massive wake-up call for Superman, because he just blew the door wide open for the other 3 racers to pull something off here. The Revealers has a good chance to move on with Superman. With the Gazeller not too far behind them, the Volkswagen technically has a chance, but in order for that to happen, he would need to finish in first, while the Revealers does not finish at all. And Superman is not learning his lesson because he's going backwards for a good chunk of the race, drifts into the finish line. He's making some very dangerous moves. I am certain, especially after that 3rd race, that this will eventually do him in. Maybe he'll still win the tournament, but not without some very risky, handshaking moments. With that though, the Superman and the Revealers are moving on. Let's see who in the second group will join them. We have a Turbulence, a Mustang, an MX-48 Turbo, and another guest appearance, this time from the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. I don't know exactly who's piloting it. We've seen multiple people do that. But somehow they were able to turn the Millennium Falcon into a car. Whoever did that, I commend their efforts, because I would not have the patience to do that. They are not in first, though, right now. That belongs to the Turbulence. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. They are, I think they're going backwards? Yes, they are. They were going backwards, and the Millennium Falcon finishes in second. Let's see what the time was. 13.55, not the greatest time we've seen, but so far it looks like anything in the 13-second mark is still relatively good. So the Turbulence starts off with a 5. Let's see how they do in heat number 2. And not to worry, folks, we will also keep an eye on the Millennium Falcon as well. If they try to do any sort of hyper jump or anything that would increase their speed unnaturally, they will also be disqualified. They do have the lead right now. Let's see if any of these wide turns can be a killer like they were in the Highway to Hell tournament. They are a little bit, but they are still keeping up with the leads, trying to get in front of the Turbulence, and they are unable to do it as they finish in second again. Meanwhile, the Mustang and the Turbo, they finish in third and fourth, respectively. They were a little bit slower that time, but they're still pulling up relatively good times in comparison to some of the other racers. So the ones to keep your eye on are the Millennium Falcon and the Turbulence. But after seeing some of the races in this as well as the previous tournament, I am not counting anybody out unless it is absolutely impossible for them to qualify or win, because we have seen some wacky stuff happen in these highway tournaments so far. Like just earlier, we saw Superman falter a little bit. The Tesla Cybertruck did in the Highway to Hell tournament. It's been crazy. And right now, the Millennium Falcon actually does pull off a win in front of the Turbulence. And the other two racers in the back are keeping relatively consistent with each other. And with the Millennium Falcon finishing even a little bit slower that time, I'm pretty sure, with a 13.65. Now, going into the last race for this group, the Turbulence is already in for the finals. The Millennium Falcon does have almost guaranteed odds. I say almost because the Mustang has a very outside chance to still be able to move on. But like in the last group, in order for that to happen, they need to finish in first, while the person in second, the Millennium Falcon in this case, does not finish, period, and then they would have to race in a tiebreaker. However, it doesn't look like that's going to happen because the Millennium Falcon is out in front again, and unlike Superman, they're not being showboaty about it. The Mustang did try to get a second place finish at least, but the Turbulence blocked that from happening. Meanwhile, the Turbo finishes in last again, and that is it. We have the racers for the finals, so let's get that underway. So for the finals, this is quite the interesting setup. Not just because we have two guest stars on the roster, but in a way, who those guest stars are. The Millennium Falcon is part of Star Wars, and as you know, Star Wars is owned by Disney, whereas Superman seems to be one of the few things that is not owned by Disney. So Superman, likely with the motivation to not be owned by Disney, is taking that lead, hoping to hold on to it. And this time he wasn't being showboaty, so good for him. He may be trying to beat the Falcon just so he doesn't have any shot of being owned by Disney at this point. He finishes with a 13.2. That's pretty good, especially with all the times we've seen so far. Not quite the fastest time. I believe that was still a 13.16. But we'll see what happens with these last three races. Now, the Turbulence and the Revealers aren't any pushovers exactly, but now Superman has that extra motivation to stay ahead of the Millennium Falcon specifically. And so far he's been able to do that. If he keeps his composure and doesn't try to show off, I'm sure he will have a solid chance to move on. But the Millennium Falcon is right on his tail. So can he stay faster than a speeding bullet and stay ahead of the Falcon? Oh, as I say that though, the Falcon actually passes him, goes into this final turn and takes the win. Not only that, but it looks like we have a tie. That is a photo finish, but I'm pretty sure they finished at pretty much the same time. I don't know if I've ever seen that in one of these tournaments before. One of the only times we've seen two people get the same score in the same race. That finish could definitely make things interesting when it comes to these next couple races. If they end up getting a tiebreaker or getting really close, that race could ultimately throw a wrench into things. And now the Millennium Falcon is staying really close to Superman, but that turn did kill a lot of their speed, and Superman is taking full advantage of it. With the turbulence not too far behind him, he does drift a little bit, loses a bit of speed. Here comes the turbulence, but it's not enough. Meanwhile, the Millennium Falcon finishes in third, and the Revealers finishes in fourth, actually stopping on top of the Falcon. Hopefully there won't be too much of a grudge between the two. It doesn't seem like they have much of a rivalry, but we'll see how that plays out later. Maybe. So going into this final race now, it's almost entirely between Superman and whoever's piloting the Millennium Falcon here. That being said, there is another outside chance, but it's very slim, and we haven't seen too many comebacks like that happen in recent memory. Right now, for the Millennium Falcon to move on, they would need to finish in first, at least ideally, while Superman would have to finish no better than third. It looks like it could happen though, because there's a bunch up at the finish line here, but Superman does pull off the win, and he will be the one to move on. A good effort by the Millennium Falcon, but put in the comments hashtag not today Disney, as Superman moves on, defeats the Millennium Falcon, and is the first entry in our roster for the next part of the tournament.